We should do the
harmonics.
Bum 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 bum
comes
bum bum
real recovery talk.
bum bum bum
You can reach
bum
Tom.
bum. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
That was pretty good what we just did there.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not going to cut that out.
Really?
No.
No, I'm all congested. I got this
It gives you
sinus infection.
Gives you a good radio voice.
Oh, nice.
Maybe you should start plugging your nose every time you do a podcast.
Perfect.
Hey, listen, first things first. Thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one it is that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, Ben?
That's right.
You're feeling a little under the weather?
Yeah, big time.
You have a man cold?
I just started taking some antibiotics today.
You taking some prebiotics with it?
You mean probiotics?
Pro, yeah.
I take those every day. It's good for digestive health.
That's good, considering all you eat is chicken, rice, and green beans, and egg whites, apparently.
Yeah, drinking egg whites has been a game changer.
That is gross.
Tastes like skim milk.
No, I doubt.
Took me forever to give it a go, and finally, Eric talked me into it. I guess he puts it in his cereal.
Jeez Louise. I mean, what's wrong with just milk?
Well, I can't drink milk.
Why?
It's not on the plan.
But isn't egg whites like drinking snot?
No, you got to try it. I've
I'm
heard
good.
some people put like sweetener in it too.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I like almond milk. Almond milk with a big bowl of cereal.
That's not milk.
I know, but it's kind of milk. All right. So in today's episode, we have been getting some inquiries about different topics, and Bridget, who is one of our avid listeners, hello, Bridget, sent us an email with a list of topics, and it was pretty good. And I did tell her thank you because, we need some, if Ben and I bring something up, we have to really rack our brains if we have talked about it before. And, so it's good when we get these types of inquiries because, hey, listen, Ben and I have 2 brain cells left combined. So when we put them together, we tend to do okay. But, it's better to have people that have multiple brain cells,
Well, it helps when we get these lists too, because honestly, Bridget listens a lot. So if she's sending us topics, it means she hasn't heard it. And I doubt that there's anybody out there. Well, I could be wrong. That's listened to every single episode.
Yeah, we talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Maybe there is, maybe not. I don't know. No, I definitely do think that there's people that's listened to every episode. But anyways, I digress. So what we're going to talk about today, which I thought was pretty interesting, was more and this kind of coincides with our step study that we're doing, which so we're on step 11. We're not doing that today. But one of the things that Bridget said to bring up was in terms of steps, how many times are people expected to work the steps? And I thought that would be a good topic to bring up, because obviously, I've worked the steps. Ben has worked the steps. And why not?
So it's an interesting topic. And I'll just go and say that I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to that. As we always say, Tom and I have our experience. And I've also worked with enough people at this point to take their experiences into consideration. But you'll hear both sides of, well, you only work the steps, quote unquote, once, and then 10, 11, and 12. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are like the maintenance steps. 10 is continue to take personal inventory. 11, prayer. 12 is carrying the message. So like essentially you go through the first 9, and then you repetitively on a daily basis do 10, 11, and 12 to keep yourself where you're at or grow. I should say. And I've also heard people say they go back through their steps every couple years. Now, what does that mean exactly? I'm not 100% sure, but like one of the things. So let me just throw it from my perspective. I've done the steps more than once. Now, it's not something I go and I just say like, oh, I need to go through the steps again. But I had an experience. And to be honest with you, like I had a sponsor that the experience was like, okay. Definitely wasn't what my experience was later, but I got a new sponsor, and that sponsor basically looked at the situation, and he has to. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. He has to approach it as if I know nothing, right? Like you can't assume that if somebody tells me they work the steps, like from my position as a sponsor, not that I don't believe them, but what does that look like? Because let's call it what it is. There is such thing as bad sponsorship. There is such thing as good sponsorship, in my opinion. So I look at it as people looking for a new experience. And that second time, I honestly had a better experience than I did the first time I ever did the steps. It was in more depth. It was in more detail. I had a greater understanding. My sponsor was better at explaining it. So when I pick up a sponsee, because I have a lot of guys that come to me who have time, so to speak. I've had people on a regular basis come to me that have like 5 years sober, and they're like, hey, my sponsor moved away. They've been my sponsor the last 5 years. They moved to California, and I need a new sponsor, so will you sponsor me? And in talking with them, I'm like, well, we can just kind of stay in touch, and you can do daily inventory, or we can pretend like you've done nothing and you have no experience with this, which I usually recommend the latter. And I'll sit down and read the big book with them as if they're brand new and go all the way through the steps. And a lot of the times, the way that my sponsor showed me how to do it, a lot of those guys haven't gone through it like that. A lot of shortcuts get taken, a lot of misinterpretations. Like anybody that listens to the podcast knows I'm a buy the book guy. So as a learning experience, yeah, it's beneficial to go through them again. But at the same time, I don't have any plans on going through the steps again. I continue to take guys through the steps at this point.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. And my perspective on this, I went through the steps once, and that was it. And I did that in my first year of sobriety. It took me, gosh, I can't even remember now, but I don't know, 8 to 10 months probably to go through all 12 steps. I don't think it's necessary to do more than once. I do, and I've never heard people say, "Oh, you got to do your steps again." Like you said, Ben, there's no written rule on this. It doesn't say anywhere in the book that you need to do your steps more than once. But can I see some benefit? Sure. Just like with anything. Anything that you do, if you want to master a craft, you do more time or, more reps, I suppose, and you're going to get better at it or have a different experience with it, so on and so forth. You read, the same book twice, it may have a different meaning to you the second time than it did the first. So I definitely do think that there's some benefit to working the steps more than once. Do I think it's a necessity? No. But I only think it's not a necessity. Well, first off, I only think you need to only work the steps one time, because the bulk of your learning experience and what the steps have to offer is going to come in the first time that you do it. From that point moving forward, I think it has less to do with steps and more than it has to do with every other aspect of sobriety. Are you actively doing 10, 11, and 12? Are you taking your inventory? Are you actively in prayer and meditation? And are you helping other people? And if you're constantly doing those three, and listen, I do want to say this is something that people are going to think, oh, okay, so every single day I have to hit my knees and I have to pray. Every single day I need to write down and take a personal inventory. Every single day I need to call my sponsees or do da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Some people, I believe, do that. I don't. That's not me. My sobriety at this point is I kind of have a built-in checker. Checker is not the right word. I have a built-in barometer. I have a built-in, I know when I do something wrong.
God consciousness.
I have God consciousness. That's good, Ben. That was good. I have God consciousness. So when I do something wrong, whether to myself or to somebody else, I know it. And that is me. The daily inventory for me kind of happens throughout the day. Prayer and meditation for me, let me finish this real quick. Prayer and meditation for me is something that, are there days that I go without prayer? Yeah. More often than probably I care to admit. But I do know now that prayer is a tool that for the vast majority of my life was underutilized. And now it's a tool in my tool belt that I choose to utilize more often because I know when I do, things are better. In the 12-step right now, do I have any sponsees? No. But I consider this podcast help. I'm helping people. Obviously here at Rock Recovery Center on a daily basis. Now, is this my recovery? No. And I know there's going to be people out there that say, oh, you can't make your work your recovery. That's not what I'm saying. I love what I do. I'm in a position now to where my job doesn't influence my sobriety in one bit. Now, if I had 6 months of sobriety and I was doing this and I didn't have any sponsees, yada, 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 I would say, okay, I would take a second look at this. But I have 3 young kids, 7, 5, and 3. I have a father that I'm caring for. We have a business to run here. I have a ton of commitments. Right now, I don't have time for a sponsee, and I'm okay with that. And there's people out there that would throw the book at me and say, you're going to relapse. And that's unfortunate, but it's the reality of it. So I'm constantly working in 10, 11, and 12. I think, would it be beneficial for me to work the 12 steps again? Probably. Do I have the time and the bandwidth for it right now? No.
I think it comes down to also understanding what it means to work all 12 steps. For instance, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. For instance, let's say, that I have a sponsee that relapsed, and he asked me, well, are we going to go back through all the steps? But let me look at it like this. Like if you take step 1, for instance, step 1 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is finding out that you have an allergy, a mental obsession, a physical allergy. And you either have this diagnosis or you don't. You don't work step 1. You diagnose yourself. So if I'm reworking steps, do I need to rework step 1? If I go to a doctor, find out that I have cancer, do I go back to a doctor 6 months later and be like, let me rework my diagnosis? Like, I either have it or I don't. Now, I understand, like, for instance, NA, there's a workbook for step 1 where they write down a bunch of reasons. I'm not an expert on it. I do AA, but, name 100 ways you're powerless over drugs. Like, AA is different in the respect that you're just simply diagnosing yourself, yes or no. And basically it comes down to you either have this thing or you don't. Step 2, like it's all educational, so to speak, as you go through the Big Book. Like you're coming to believe a power greater than yourself. Like if you've already done that, do you need to redo that? So is there such thing as even reworking the steps?
Yeah.
I don't know. And this is where it's all up for debate. So without trying to make it confusing, what I will say is this, because I've had these experiences through my sobriety where I went through the steps and then I hear this person in a meeting consistently sharing and they make reference to the Big Book. And they're referencing and explaining it in ways that were more advanced than what I had experienced or interpreted or heard before. And I'm like, where are they getting all this knowledge? That may be a situation where I want to go up to that guy and be like, man, it sounds like you have more experience with that big book than I do. Will you take me through it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So is there such thing as working the steps over? I don't know. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory. We learn how to take inventory in step 4. So essentially you're just continuing to apply what you already know. 8 and 9 is making amends. Step 10 says at the end, when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. I learned how to make amends in step 9. So essentially I'm just taking those principles and continuing to do them. So essentially I'm working steps every day.
Yeah.
I wake up every day, and at this point, unconsciously, I know that I have an allergy to alcohol and drugs. I don't need to go back through step 1. I just know, dude. I know that if I take a pain pill, I'm done for. Like, I'm not going to stop. But I just continue.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, once you're in and you have a solid foundation of recovery or sobriety, you are really kind of working steps every day, you know? But I think if you do things the way that they're outlined and you put 110% into it the first time, you shouldn't have to do the steps more than once. You really shouldn't. I mean, if you go through the 12 steps, you're sponsoring people, you have a good sober network of people, you know, you build a solid foundation, you're doing things like you're progressing not only in your sobriety, but in your family life. You know, you're trying to improve your family life, you're trying to advance your career, you have your meeting commitments, maybe you have a sponsee or two. You're working out constantly, not constantly, but you at least have some level of physical fitness. You're eating good food. Like, a lot of times people just want to focus on the steps and having sponsors or sponsees. And, you know, if you do that, then you're going to be good. I don't agree. I think that this is, you know, I've met plenty of people that have gone through the steps and they've gotten sponsors and they've gotten sponsees, but man, their lives are freaking miserable.
Yeah, you brought up the physical part, for instance. Like, I know a lot of people in the rooms, man, that they clearly know the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They've clearly worked 12 steps. They work with sponsees. But at the same time, their health is absolutely falling apart.
Yeah, smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day, you know.
Staying up till 2, 3 in the morning every night.
Yeah.
You know, just a very unhealthy lifestyle. It really is. I mean, you have to look at mind, body, spirit, and are all these being addressed? I think that's more, Tom used the word barometer earlier, barometer of what recovery should look like, because opinions are going to run to extremes.
Yeah.
You know, I have my opinions on whether or not somebody went through the steps properly, but is it my place to throw it out there, call people out? Like, I'll just throw my opinion out there right now. In my opinion, if a sponsor didn't sit down with you and read the big book to you, line by line, break it down, and every time it says stop and do something, you stopped and did it, you didn't actually work the steps the way they're supposed to be worked.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my experience. I have an opinion based off my experience. You know, sometimes I'll hear, for instance, this one personally drives me crazy, but it's a good example. I'll ask, like, one of our clients, oh, what step are you on with your sponsor? You know, and they're like, oh, I'm on step 3. I was like, oh, how's your experience with steps 1 and 2 and 3 up to this point? Well, step 1, he had me read Bill's story, and then I had to call him afterwards and tell him how I related. And then on step 2, he had me read Chapter the Agnostic, and I just had to highlight the things I related to and tell him about it. I'm like, in my opinion, your sponsor didn't sit down and share their experience with you, utilizing the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's crappy sponsorship.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, so hopefully not taking a bad taste, but...
Well, it's, you know, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, and this, honestly, all of AA, I mean, is, you know, it's a bunch of opinions, you know, and that, you know what they say about opinions, Ben?
No, I do, Tom.
What?
Are we allowed to say that on air?
I don't know. So, anyways, that's kind of it. Do you need to work the steps more than once? No. Could you? Yeah. I don't know. For me, it just doesn't seem like something that I'm going to be doing anytime soon.
I want to reiterate something that I shared and based off of give you something finite. I had strung together, how long was I sober? 2 years. Just started working my job at Unity as a behavioral health tech. I just got in the substance abuse field. And I had picked up a new home group up at Oasis Club on Sunday nights. It was a big book study. And there was 2 individuals. One was a male and one was a female. And as in the beginning of the meeting, we would read part of the big book, and then people would open share on it the last 30 minutes. And these 2 individuals, the way that they shared about the big book, they showed me how little I knew. It wasn't there, they didn't do it intentionally. They weren't talking direct at me. But I realized by hearing them speak and share that I had missed a lot, and there was a lot of knowledge for me to gain still. And that's when I made a decision to get another sponsor who knew the big book better than I did to take me through it.
Constantly be a student.
Mm-hmm.
Guess that's the best way to put it. Well, I think that's it, Ben. How was that? Good?
Pretty good. That's a tough one to lock down.
Yeah.
Because opinions run to extremes on that one.
Yep. But ours are the only ones that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kidding. All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.